After living in Shanghai for 16 years, an American family decides to leave the Chinese city they call home. They explain what became the last straw. China announces its first case of a COVID-19 subvariant in Shanghai. Heavy restrictions are coming back to the city, while locals fear going back under lockdown. Beijing voices 4 preconditions for improving China-Australia relations. Australia's prime minister responds. And one man says he witnessed a patient being prepared for live organ harvesting in a Chinese military hospital. The non-consenting donor was still alive. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The K family from the U.S. are part of a wave of residents departing Shanghai, leaving behind their homes and memories. The wave of departures is driven by 2 years of strict COVID-19 curbs, including a crushing 2-month lockdown. Here are the details.
We'll miss it so much. It's those little things, you know, the person who hands you your dumpling, the person who, all these people that you see on a daily basis that are just part of your rhythm here. I just want to capture those memories and take them with me.
After 16 years living in Shanghai, American expat Heather Kay and her family are part of an exodus of both foreigners and locals driven out by China's unshifting COVID-0 policy that's seen 2 years of strict curbs, border controls, and a crushing 2-month lockdown. For many, this lockdown was the final straw. Some opted to leave in the midst of it, stunned by how hard it was to even get food delivered or fearing separation from family members should they be infected with COVID. Others, like the Kays, opted to wait it out. But in the end, the deteriorating health of her parents back home added to the growing list of reasons to leave.
It was sort of a perfect storm of those decisions. Talking to people who were, scheduled to move in this summer, they are not. They are going to Singapore, they're going to Bangkok, they're going to alternative countries to still service APAC, to be part of the APAC leadership. But, being based here, so many people can't really do their jobs anymore because they do require so much travel.
According to the European Chamber, the number of foreigners in China has halved since the pandemic began. It predicts that number could halve again this summer, with few international workers coming in to replenish the numbers leaving. Heather and her husband moved to Shanghai from New York in 2006 for a 1-year adventure. 16 years later, they both speak Mandarin, run businesses here, and own a flat. For their daughters, this city is the only home they've known.
I would describe Shanghai as just like my home, really. I've lived here for so long and for my entire life. I think it's going to be a difficult change.
We're so thankful for all of our amazing years here and look forward to coming back soon. So we want to say goodbye, Shanghai.
The Kays bought a new house in Washington, D.C. during the 2-month lockdown. Upon landing in the U.S., Heather and her daughters all tested positive for COVID, but none of them have regrets about their move.
And there are people still struggling to leave Shanghai. Some areas in Shanghai have been put back under lockdown in recent days. Under those orders, authorities quickly shut down certain neighborhoods, sometimes without informing the residents ahead of time. A video published on Chinese social media caught a Western woman and a Chinese man from Shanghai on camera. The two were in a rush to get to the airport and catch a flight, but the entrance to the neighborhood was locked, and no one on site could open the door. A COVID-19 subvariant has made its way to Shanghai. It's called BA.5. Now, all flights are canceled in the city, while authorities have ordered mass virus testing and the closing of residential compounds. Some locals say they're afraid of going back under lockdown. Let's zoom in.
Shanghai's first case of the BA.5 subvariant was reportedly found in the city last Sunday. That's according to the vice head of Shanghai's Health Commission. Now the city is under fear of lockdown again. Some compounds where the infection was found were already blocked off with wires and metal sheeting. At the same time, all flights from Shanghai to other cities in China have been canceled. The discovery is driving ramped-up restrictions in the city starting Tuesday. The rules require mass virus testing for residents in 8 major Shanghai districts. As for those who may have come into close contact with confirmed patients, isolation hospital wards have relaunched to receive them. Shanghai's population was released from an earlier months-long confinement only weeks ago. As of Monday, a total of 54 new infections have been discovered in Shanghai. That's based on the latest updates from Shanghai's Health Commission website. The numbers mark a record high since May. Dr. Anthony Fauci warned that the BA.5 subvariant can substantially evade neutralizing antibodies. He also suggested it targets both vaccinated and infected groups. Symptoms of BA.5 include runny nose, headache, sore throat, cough, and fatigue.
Next, let's head over to the Indo-Pacific region. Foreign ministers from China and Australia met over the weekend. The meeting marks their first talk since Australia's new prime minister was elected in May. The Chinese side blames the former Australian government, the Morrison administration, for the deterioration of China-Australia relations. Given that background, China brought up 4 requirements for Australia during the talks, which Beijing said would improve cooperation. To follow them, China said Australia must, 1, insist on seeing China as a partner rather than an opponent. 2, insist on getting along by seeking common ground while reserving differences. 3, insist on not targeting China, nor being subject to target China by a third party. And 4, insist on building a positive and pragmatic societal public opinion base toward China. Here's what Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said about China's requests.
Look, Australia doesn't respond to demands, we respond to our own national interest. I'll say this, we will cooperate with China where we can. I want to build good relations with all countries, but we will stand up for Australia's interests when we must.
On the other hand, the Australian government has attempted to persuade China to lift its heavy tariffs on Australian goods, including wine, coal, lumber, and other exports. Those tariffs reach as high as 218% on bottled Australian wine imports through 2026. The penalties are largely seen as retaliation, imposed after the former Australian government called for an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. Australia's new administration has shown interest in improving Australia-China relations. It remains to be seen whether Australia will fulfill China's demands. Worth noting, during the G20 summit, China chose to hold bilateral talks with Australia over its neighbors South Korea and Japan. The dark side of the organ transplant market. A Japanese witness says he saw a non-consenting organ donor drugged and intentionally injured so he wouldn't be able to escape. Here's NTD's Jane Worrell with more. And just a warning, some viewers may find the following content disturbing.
As evidence mounts, the Chinese regime continues its lucrative organ trade from prisoners of conscience. A former criminal gang member in Japan recalls witnessing it. It was in 2007 that his friend's brother's liver failed, and they desperately tried to find him a liver transplant.
To have a liver transplant, if you were to do it, the only option would be to do it in America, France, or China. But the waiting time is very long in America and France, and he couldn't wait. It also costs a lot, and the regulations are very strict. So we chose Beijing, China. In Beijing, there's a military police hospital where they receive Japanese people. What about the donor? They said, we can have it ready straight away.
He says the family of the patient found the albumin from the Chinese hospital, a protein needed for a liver transplant, wasn't good enough. So Segura helped them buy the solution in Japan and smuggle it into Beijing with the sanction of the Chinese hospital. The day before the scheduled surgery, he was asked if he'd like to take a look at the donor.
When I opened the curtain, the donor was sleeping, drugged. He was sleeping. He had surgery to sever the tendons in both of his hands and feet the day before. I asked why. One reason was to prevent him from running away. Also, if a donor is tense, the body would shrink, which isn't good for the organs. That's the reason for this surgery. then leave the patient in a hazy state with anesthesia like a drug. A young and very good liver, he said. I thought, terrible. He said, there are many people in China, so we can have donors. We can prepare matching ones, and there are so many bad people who have to die, so best to utilize them.
When he asked the doctor what the man had done, the doctor said he's from a terrorist group, and after pressing more, he answered, Falun Gong. Falun Gong is an ancient spiritual practice that's based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion and tolerance. Falun Gong practitioners have been brutally persecuted under the Chinese regime since 1999.
Doctors killed.
In 2019, a People's Tribunal held in London found that Falun Gong practitioners were probably the main source of supply for forced organ harvesting, and there was evidence of mass medical testing of the Uyghur ethnic group. There are reports that say the Chinese regime is targeting the Uyghur ethnicity for organ harvesting to market them to recipients in Saudi Arabia. Investigative journalist and author of the book The Slaughter, Ethan Gutman, says the medical community needs to be more aware about how the Chinese regime works.
This is a deep corruption of medicine. I shouldn't even have to say such a thing. It's so obvious. But the medical world has chosen to obfuscate and to ignore the issue. And unfortunately, they find it very hard to climb down from the position that, we should work together with the Chinese to solve this.
Investigations show China's organ transplant program to be one of the largest in the world. So far, a handful of countries have passed legislation that would stop their citizens from travelling there for organ tourism. Jane Worrell, NTD News.
China has seen a few recent cases of bird influenza, all of them infecting pigs. The strain is called H9N2. Now, a study by the University of Hong Kong says the virus is recombining with pig flu, producing a virus that may be able to transmit between humans and animals. The research article was published by the School of Public Health at Hong Kong University. It warns that China should continue to monitor the swine influenza virus. From over 800 pig nasal swab samples, researchers detected an A strain last August called H3N2. Its base gene segments come from H1N1, the flu variant that's known to quickly replicate in the human respiratory system. The following month, researchers isolated influenza A virus, a reassortment of multiple swine flu lineages, including H9N2. Studies show the internal genes derived from H9N2 may contribute to animal to human transmission. China's commercial capital of Shanghai was among dozens of cities baking in scorching temperatures on Tuesday. Unusually hot weather buckled roads and drove people to seek places to cool off. By 11 a.m. local time, nearly 70 cities, including Shanghai, had issued red alerts for excessive heat, the highest in a 3-tier warning system. That level signifies forecast temperatures of more than 40 degrees Celsius. That's 104 degrees Fahrenheit in the next 24 hours. Construction and other outdoor work are to be halted. Shanghai warned its population of 26 million to prepare for hot weather this week. That's as the city is still fighting sporadic outbreaks of COVID-19. Since record-keeping began in 1873, it has only seen 15 days of temperatures exceeding 104 degrees. China is facing a summer of contrasts this year, with heat waves and heavy rainfall taking turns across the country. Authorities citing climate problems have warned of potential disasters from mid-July, usually the hottest and wettest time of year. In Chongqing City, an area known as China's second furnace, the roof of one museum got so hot it melted. Roofing tiles started popping off as the heat dissolved the underlying tar. Chongqing authorities have deployed water spraying trucks through the sanitation department to keep roads cool. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what's coming up in our second half. With tensions in the Korean peninsula on the rise, the U.S. and South Korea are joining together to flex their military might. They're hosting joint drills for the first time in the last 5 years. And over in mainland China, authorities rejected a couple's request to help find their long-kidnapped son. The full episode is available on our partner platform at Bok TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, promoting martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. The 2022 NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition preliminaries will be held in New York and Taiwan. On August 28th, the finals will be broadcast live online worldwide. Registration hotline 188-477-9228. For more information, please visit martialarts.ntdtv.com.